and the first Pokemon is of course none other than Venusaur. In Generation 5, Venusaur received its hidden ability, Chlorophyll, and became the representative of Sun Sweeping, just about single-handedly propelling Ninetales' team style into the limelight, alongside the Sun and Rain teams Venusaur so regularly plowed through. Sun really was synonymous with Venusaur, as no other Chlorophyll sweeper was anywhere near its equal. With Growth effectively becoming a Swords Dance and Nasty Plot under Sun, Venusaur was the whole package. It was powerful, it was fast enough to outrun every Scarfer, and it was even strong enough to withstand most of the priority lobbed at it. It eventually proved to be so game-breaking, it prompted the player base to unprecedentedly bypass usual tiering practice and authority in order to strong-arm into tournament play a Chlorophyll Drought ban. Drought summoned Sun ceased to be permanent in Gen 6, but Venusaur received an amazing Mega Evolution as compensation. It wasn't just incredibly bulky, but it also received Thick Fat as an ability, taking away its fire and ice weaknesses, and thus making it extremely difficult to take down. Mega Venusaur wasn't just a passive wall, but rather it was an excellent tank, combining its superb hit-taking with a potent offensive assault of its own that was all the more difficult to withstand with how effortlessly it devoured counterattacks. In VGC, regular Venusaur partnered with its best friend forever, Mega Charizard Y, for some sun-fueled speed control, doubling its speed thanks to the sun that Zard Y summoned and sleep powdering threats while Zard incinerated them with Heat Wave. This would happen again in Pokemon Champions as they became a huge part of the metagame. In Gen 8, Venusaur returned to the Chlorophyll sweeping front and now boasted an upgrade over its previous Hidden Power Fire and its newly gained Weather Ball, which enhanced its crushing sun-boosted strength further to great effect even with limited sun teams. In VGC, Venusaur took its Chlorophyll sweeping even further with its excellent Gigantamax form, pairing with Groudon to power either Leaf Storm or Frenzy Plant into a G-Max Vine Lash that, in addition to overwhelming direct strength, also struck both non-grass targets for a whopping 16.67% damage for 4 turns after its use. And now from Leaf Green, we go to Fire Red with Charizard. In Game Freak's most defining case of favoritism, Gen 6 saw them bring Charizard into the limelight with not one, but 2 Megas to fulfill different dreams of alternate Charizards. X, where it finally became a Dragon type, and Y, where it unleashed Drought. Both were utterly ferocious and among the most frightening Pokemon around in singles, while Y was/is the most defining in VGC with the unreal strength of sun-powered stabs alongside an automatic Solar Beam to crush waters, while in singles X's Dragon Dancer was an immensely feared sweeper for its excellent dual stabs boosted further by its Tough Claws ability. Zard's Gen 5 gained Solar Power wasn't useful upon release, as it was most notorious for being used by clueless players trying it in Ubers, but in Gen 8 upon gaining Weather Ball, it became quite a threat. It was far more notorious in VGC though, where its Gigantamax form was an utter terror under Sun. Its stab heat waves and blast burns turned into G-Max Wildfire, utterly torching opponents with Sun and Solar Power boosts, and like G-Max Vine Lash, left most types, in this case non-fires, with the same serious nasty 16% residual damage for 4 turns. Now for Charizard's classic rival, we have Blastoise. But before we get to the next one, a word from our sponsor, Factor. Look, we're all busy people. For me, I'm usually either editing footage or tilt queuing on Pokemon Champions. Whatever it may be, sometimes I'm so busy I forget to eat. That's where Factor comes in. Factor delivers chef-crafted, dietitian-approved pre-cooked meals so you don't have to worry about what to eat or what groceries to buy. Factor is ready in just 2 minutes, and they have an enormous variety of meals. You can even choose the different type of meal plans, which are keto, calorie smart, veggie vegan, protein plus, or chef's choice. And let me tell you, I love being sponsored by Factor because their food is the real deal. This truffle butter filet mignon is really good. The truffle butter really gives it a unique flavor. I also love this Korean style Buldak burger, which is insanely delicious. I can't believe something from a microwave is this good. I can't wait to try all of these meals. Also, they do smoothies and juices too. Thanks for the delicious strawberry banana smoothie as well, Factor. So if you want to support the channel and save time while eating delicious pre-cooked meals, scan the QR code, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code FALLSWIPEFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code FALLSWIPEFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. This offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. An honorary mention to Blastoise receiving Rain Dish in Gen 5, which did give it the slightest of short-lived niches in OU. Not really impactful, but it was tried. Far more significant, of course, was its Mega, a solid lower-tier attacker in Gen 6 and 7, with a unique blend of power, hit-taking ability, and team support in the entry hazard clearing Rapid Spin. Mega Blastoise's power was unique in that it effectively got multiple stabs with the way its Mega Launcher ability powered up Aura Sphere and Dark Pulse. Then in Gen 8, Blastoise received the monstrous boost of Shell Smash. It was still lower lower tier thanks to its stats, but there it was a viciously potent cleanup artist. Now at long last in Pokemon Champions, it has been able to unite Shell Smash and its Mega to frighteningly powerful effect. Additionally, Blastoise's Gigantamax form had a VGC niche for, similarly to the other Kanto starters, G-Max moves having the tremendous boosted power of Hydro Cannon turn G-Max Cannonade alongside hitting non-water opponents for striking amounts of after-turn residual damage. Similarly to the other Kanto starters' G-Max moves, took Hydro Cannon to turn into a G-Max Cannonade, which hit non-water opponents for striking amounts of after-turn residual damage. Now on to Johto, we have Meganium and its Mega Evolution. Meganium got absolutely zilch for so long. Its hidden ability from Gen 5's Dream World was the stunningly useless Leaf Guard, but finally it got an amazing Mega in Champions. Grass Fairy typing is unique and highly effective. In addition to providing a solid secondary stab, taking on Dragon, Fighting, and Dark types is always an excellent addition to a repertoire. It also goes well with the tremendous boost to Meganium's power and bulk. However, what really makes Mega Meganium excellent is the Mega Soul ability, which functionally always puts it under permanent sun, even if other weather is active. That's right, send Mega Meganium out in rain, sand, or snow, and watch as it unleashes automatic, full-powered stab solar beams and sun-boosted fire-type weather balls while healing for 66% health with Synthesis, all the more satisfying for how long it's waited for its redemption. Now to the fire starter of the Gen 2 bunch, we have Typhlosion. Typhlosion getting Eruption in Gen 5 made it unique among fire starters and fires in general. To this day, it is the fastest user of the move, tied with Entei, but Typhlosion's special attack is much higher than its generation's fire legendary. It made a solid lower tier career out of spamming Scarf and Specs Eruption. Then in Gen 8, it received a slightly slower but stronger Hisuian form that also came with the benefit of half ghost typing, meaning it received the best stab type in the game, particularly excellent considering how spammable fire is already. Hisuian Typhlosion didn't quite have the power of Chandelure, which its playstyle resembled, but it was notably faster and packed a killer signature move. While the Will-O-Wisp Stab Hex combo was already fiercely effective on many ghost types, what with Burn being such a spammable status and Ghost being scary when it was just Shadow Balls being spammed, never mind a fully powered Hex, Hisuian Typhlosion had Infernal Parade, which was sort of like a ghost type lava plume that had the potential to become Hex. It had the lauded 30% burn rate and doubled in power against status targets, meaning spamming it was good not just for damage, but for strengthening its own hits, whether for immediate or later use. The only downside was that Infernal Parade was slightly weaker than Hex, but this was compensated for in Pokemon Champions, where it became equally powerful. Now to conclude the second gen, we have Feraligatr. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Feraligatr received Aqua Jet, which finally allowed it to run an effective Swords Dance set. Its significantly boosted strength allowed it to break through walls, while Aqua Jet's stat priority let it tear through frailer, faster targets. It had a solid niche even in OU play, especially on rain teams in Gen 5. In Gen 6, Feraligatr received Sheer Force as its hidden ability. It shifted gears over to Dragon Dance, using the speed boost with which to better unleash its coverage option's newly minted power, Sheer Force combining with recoil-free Life Orb to unleash the full, brutal extent of its waterfalls, or Liquidation in Gen 7, as well as Crunches and Ice Punches. Finally, in Champions, Feraligatr also got a Mega, going the Mega Charizard X route. It also became half Dragon, but became capable of dishing out even greater power. Its completely outwrought attack stat would have been one thing, but it came in tandem with a unique new ability, Dragonize, which rendered normal type moves into stab and then boosted their power further by 20%. Now with Johto in the rear view, we move on to Hoenn with Sceptile. Like Feraligatr and Charizard, Sceptile also leaned into its latent dragon design with the Mega that it received in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Picking up an excellent secondary stab was immensely helpful as a complement to its signature Speedy Grass Onslaught, which actually got a lot faster. Mega Sceptile had a downright tremendous speed stat and was no slouch in the special attack department either. In addition to hitting incredibly hard and fast, it even picked up Lightning Rod as an ability, meaning Thunder Wave, rather than ruin its speed, would actually boost its special attack. Mega Sceptile was more of a lower tier singles threat thanks to its frailty and quad ice weaknesses, as well as an occasional lack of power. Perhaps it just needed Draco Meter, but in the context of the lower tiers, it was extremely threatening. Then in Pokemon Champions, Sceptile most notably received Earth Power, which finally gave it special coverage versus fires, poisons, and steels. Now for the Gen 3 starter that was first decorated with a Mega, as the only one to receive one before its original games' remakes were even released, we have Blaziken. But Blaziken was already making waves and causing controversies in Gen 5, where it received the hidden ability Speed Boost. It not only completely eclipsed the Infernape that had eclipsed it in Gen 4, it began destroying the entire metagame around it, even more so than other broken monsters like Sandrush Extra Drill. It was especially terrifying on Sun teams, which really pushed its power into the territory of crushing even Resist, and wound up banned fairly early into the generation, making it the first starter to be too powerful for standard play, which of course inspired a wave wave of controversy. Blaziken also wound up being the first starter to be genuinely good in Ubers, fueled as it was by permanent Sun from Groudon, and with a high jump kick Kyogre wouldn't dare feel comfortable changing the weather again. Sun was no longer permanent in Gen 6, but not only was Speed Boost Blaziken an innately sufficient threat to get banned again without such assistance, and not only had it functioned on more than just Sun before, it also benefited from the lack of permanent rain and sand to clash with. And it also got a Mega Evolution that kept Speed Boost while getting stronger and faster, making it easier for it to outrun even faster Pokemon, and it's also even bulkier, which went alongside its power boost not requiring the recoil of Life Orb to make it more survivable and thus even more of a threat. Mega Blaziken was also far too powerful for standard play, and posed quite a threat in Ubers as well. These two were such major threats that in Gen 8, when Megas were no more and base Blaziken returned to standard play, the changes it received, like close combat as a more reliable fighting stab, the incredible pivoting of U-turn, which would have been drastic previously, were comparatively minor, though of course useful, as Blaziken continued to thrive completely in both Gens 8 and 9. Now to round out the Hoenn trio, we've got Swampert. Swampert's defensive stalwart status in Gen 3 was reinforced and in ways even more amplified upon gaining the defining utility of Stealth Rock in Gen 4, which would pretty much always ensure some sort of utility going forward, not just necessarily in standard play anymore, as it sadly wasn't able to keep up with the power creep of Gen 5, though this wasn't for a lack of new tools, as it did receive more amazing utility in the burn distributing Scald. The unfortunate part was that it received the damp ability a generation too late. In Gen 5, the explosion it blocked had been nerfed to half its previous shattering power. As if to make up for this, Swampert's Gen 6 Mega was superb. It becomes a top tier offensive threat under rain, gaining the Swift Swim ability and thus going from meager speed to outrunning just about everything, the majority of which would automatically drop in the face of Megapert's immense power, wielding brutal dual stabs and excellent coverage, and was an even more dangerous threat for being incredibly bulky as well. It was such an all-around great Pokemon, it could even set up Stealth Rock for its team. After excelling in Gen 6 and 7, Megapert has returned to absolutely dominate the Pokemon Champions VGC metagame, and this is assisted by another buff. In Champion, Swampert received a major upgrade to its physical water stab, Wave Crash, which translates into even more effortless KOs under rain. The meta was already rain heavy before, but Mega Swampert's arrival took it to another level. Now we move on to the 4th generation Sinnoh with Torterra. The Sinnoh starters are the first generation to not get any alternate forms at all, and for a long time they didn't really get any sort of significant buffs either. Perhaps it was because they were such overall solid Pokemon to begin with. Indeed, Torterra's unique typing had a lot to like, but they still needed more and were consistently passed over. In fact, it wasn't until Gen 9 that Torterra received an incredible move which seemed obvious for it to have had a long time ago: Shell Smash. It being so slow even at +2 limited its impact to the lower tiers, but between superb power and dual stabs alongside Stone Edge's coverage, it was the type of drastic enough boost that Torterra needed in order to not just keep up with, but absolutely pulverize its lower tier competition. And that's exactly what it wound up doing. It was assisted by the upgrade of its ground stab, going from Earthquake to Headlong Rush, a ground equivalent of close combat, further helping it drive home those crucial KOs and giving it a second 120 base power stab alongside Woodhammer. Now we move on to the other Sinnoh starter with Empoleon. Wait, what? That's right, we're going right to Empoleon, meaning there's no Infernape, because remember, this is every major change inherent to starters, and Infernape hasn't gotten anything nearly significant enough to be considered major and warrant its inclusion. It's mostly just gotten small buffs which, while appreciated, haven't really changed the way it's played since Generation 4 in any drastic way. So now that we've acknowledged the first starter to be skipped over, we go to Empoleon, which, like Torterra, also took quite a while to get its major buffs. Its hidden ability for most generations was Defiant, whose sharp attack boost upon getting a stat lowered was an excellent tool, just not for Empoleon and its significantly lower attack, even with Swords Dance in tow. But in Gen 9, it finally received the flip side ability, Competitive, which was much better for working in tandem with Empoleon's excellent special attack, allowing it to punish the Fogs and their evasion lowering with the Plum, while not having to force itself to run an otherwise inferior set that wasn't nearly as threatening overall. Gen 9 also gifted Empoleon Roost, a major boon for a Pokemon with such unique typing and great natural bulk, which thus lent itself so well to a defensive role. Previously, it was held back by a lack of recovery, meaning it was only able to weather opposing hits for so long. And as if with any Pokemon relying solely on leftovers for recovery, this also meant it would have to run from knockoff, as it would from a one-hit KO move. With Roost though, Empoleon becomes much more flexible and not having to fear it so, as well as becoming far more resilient in the face of the damage it withstands through its many valuable resists. Now with Sinnoh done, we move on to Generation 5 with Serperior, whose sole buff was among the most significant on this list. A complete and utter game changer. In Gen 5, Serperior was a decent lower tier Pokemon, coasting off the strength of its speed, but its weak special special attack stat and the single stage special attack boost of Calm Mind didn't let it do much. Then in Oraz, it got its hidden ability, Contrary, and everything exploded. Its Draco Meteor equivalent Grass Stab, Leaf Storm, was now no longer a move whose threat diminished upon repeated use, but now was rather encouraged, with Contrary basically giving Serperior's strongest stab a built-in Nasty Plot boost, which let it quickly spiral into dishing out devastating damage far beyond what you'd expect of its low special attack. This was especially incredible with Serperior's amazing speed, as well as an outstanding support move pool whose surface simplicity, deceptively masked, and obnoxious nastiness Serperior was tremendously well equipped to use, spreading paralysis with Glare and hiding behind substitutes while draining opponents' health with Leech Seed, and that was only the start of it, though this alone was enough to see it regularly brute force its way through its checks, which were often just a turn or two away from being overwhelmed. Serperior's monstrous Leaf Storms not only launched it to standard play, but made it one of the most feared Pokemon there. Now over to the fire starter, we have Emboar. Emboar was initially a meager third addition to the firefighting tradition, with seemingly very little going for it outside of some solid bulk, which wasn't enough for a niche. However, gaining Reckless as a hidden ability in Black and White 2 gave it its own niche. Relegated to the lower tiers though it was, it became an incredible hard hitter. This may have disappeared into the ether of overly power-crept higher tiers, but seriously stung when the base stat totals around it started getting lower. Its Reckless boosted stab flare blitzes, as well as the excellent electric coverage of Wild Charge, made it uncommonly powerful for a Choice Scarfer. It wielded this rare one-hit KO potential alongside solid speed to good results in the lower tiers. This was at least something, even if not a lot in the big picture, especially as Emboar didn't get anything else until Champions introduced its Mega, and even that wasn't exactly good. Not only was it certainly not one of the more successful Megas, not by a long shot, in fact it was quite terrible, with speed that was improved but still severely lacking, and the upgrades to its power and bulk not exactly the over-the-top kind that would get it anywhere, especially with the severe downgrade in ability with its newly gained Mold Breaker. Still, a Mega is a drastic change, even if it is bad. At least Mega Emboar has a cool design. Now over to the water starter, we have Samurott. For so long, Samurott was, if not a true generic water type, then quite close to it, with decent stats but not much in the move pool to distinguish it, leaving it lower tier and not exactly amazing. But then Hisuian Samurott was unleashed in Gen 9, and it became one of the best, most important Pokemon around. It now had two great stabs thanks to its newly gained half-dark typing, which enabled its signature weapon, Ceaseless Edge, which, thanks to H. Samurott's sharpness ability and strong base 108 attack, dealt great damage equal to a full power knockoff while simultaneously laying spikes. This alone was extraordinary utility, an amazing offensive weapon and support tool that could be used in many guises, as part of a utility set, a Focus Sash lead, and a Choice Scarfer, which was also a great late game cleanup artist, as was Swords Dance. What made Hisuian Samurott so great was just how threatening it was in addition to Ceaseless Edge. It could sweep with the incredible priority of Stab Sucker Punch, it could threaten the heavy-duty boots shielding opponents from the spikes it laid with Stab Knockoff, it could pivot with Flip Turn, and much more. Hisuian Samurott consistently excelled on all manner of teams and was a truly singular competitive presence. Now with the Unova starters done, we move on to their 6 counterparts, starting with Chesnaught. Chesnaught received its hidden ability Bulletproof early on, providing it an immunity to ballistic moves, and its major benefit, being Shadow Ball immune, is incredibly useful given how powerful Ghost type would become. And even if Chesnaught doesn't quite counter a Ghost type, the pivoting option is always valuable. Being able to switch in against Aura Sphere and Focus Blast is valuable as well. It was solid but not quite a game breaker, and beyond that, Chesnaught was quite neglected before receiving its Champions Mega, which has doubled down on its previously established strengths and style. Slow but bulky and powerful, it's a solid way to use unique typing, replete with resistances as defensive utility, especially as Mega Chesnaught's base defense is absolutely enormous, and it's able to strike back effectively in turn. The slow speed can work to its advantage as well, poising it to deal some powerful damage under Trick Room, though this is a role with no shortage of competition. Mega Chesnaught's not a star, but basically being base Chesnaught 2.0 isn't a bad thing at all, considering it was already a fundamentally solid Pokemon that just needed some assistance with stats. Keeping Bulletproof as an ability is surprisingly important. Being immune to Weather Ball is quite useful in a Champions metagame chock full of them, and it even goes further against Venusaur by being immune to Sludge Bomb as well. Now over to the fire starter, we have Delphox, which, talk about a rejuvenation. Delphox was a fine lower tier threat before, with a strong synergistic stab combination alongside great speed and power, the latter pushed further by its gaining Nasty Plot in Gen 9, but it was also very frail alongside type littered with weaknesses, and with stats not quite extreme enough to compensate. As a result, Delphox toiled away in the lower tiers, where it was a solid presence, but even there found itself plagued by its inability to take a hit. Now, its Mega goes absolutely crazy with stats, outstanding special attack, and an amazing speed benchmark. Base 130 is already top of the line, but Mega Delphox goes even further with an amazing base 134, and to make things even better, it gets Levitate, not just removing its ground weakness, but completely flipping it into an immunity. Now it gets to use Earthquakes as an entry point, not bad for a Pokemon with a complete lack of physical bulk. Plus, it's mega bulked out its special defense quite a bit. Mega Delphox going from Forgotten Fire Starter to being one of the fastest, strongest threats around is exactly what Mega Evolutions are for. Now over to one of the most iconic starters ever, Greninja, which has had one doozy of ups and downs across the many major changes in its history. First, it became the second starter to get banned in Gen 6 for how its hidden ability Protean gave it stab on everything, also referred to as Omnistab, which is huge for a Pokemon with such a great speed tier, good power, and an absolutely amazing move pool. As if the endless coverage wasn't enough, it even laid spikes. Greninja would eventually see this aspect of its game watered down thanks to the Protean nerf, but that's not till way later. And in Gen 7, not only did it continue to threaten quite literally everything with its Omnistab, it also received a Quasi-Mega thanks to the Battle Bond ability, transforming it into Ash Greninja upon directly KOing an opponent. Yes, it was like a Mega you had to work for to unlock in the battle, but the reward was a Pokemon so staggeringly fast and strong, it would have surely been banned had it been available from the start of the game. Not only did it jump up several major speed tiers, significant for a Pokemon that had already been difficult to outrun, it was also boasting a special attack stat above Kyogre's, and even a powered up version of its signature priority move, Water Shuriken. It was a defining Gen 7 threat, though it would also be nerfed upon Greninja's return in Gen 9, as upon getting a KO, rather than transform it into Ash Greninja, Battle Bond would boost its attack, special attack, and speed once. Certainly a good effect to have, but not the game breaker worth fighting to activate just like Ash Greninja. That said, fear not, for though Greninja's two major abilities have seen themselves nerfed, it's now back with an actual Mega Evolution, one that gets activated immediately. It's not quite as extreme as Ash Greninja power-wise, though it does hit quite hard. Its real strength is the pushing of its already formidable speed to downright incredible levels, a stunning base 142, launching it ahead of even Mega Delphox. Plus, even nerfed to only activate on the first move used per switch-in, Protean is still a strong ability for allowing Mega Greninja to get stabbed on a valuable coverage move, primarily Ice Beam. Now with the Kalos trio done, over to the Gen 7 starters with Decidueye, which is a Pokemon with a lot to like. It has great rare typing, but under-delivers with deceptively inept stats. Then the Hisuian form came around and continued in this tradition. Despite the reinvention, it seemed like it'd be an incredibly well-off new typing, giving it superb new dual stabs alongside a stronger attack stat and better overall bulk, and what its signature move Triple Arrows is. It was loaded with huge secondary effects, a 50% chance to lower defense, a 30% chance to flinch, and even a high critical hit rate. And even that's not all, as Hisuian Decidueye's Scrappy ability also meant it override ghost types would-be immunity to the move, making it even more spammable. And yet, Hisuian Decidueye was just too slow to go anywhere, even with the Choice Scarf. It didn't help that, while pretty strong, it wasn't exactly crushing everything either, at least relative to what it required alongside the lacking nature of not just its speed, but its bulk as well, which, though solid, needed to be more if it was going to be this slow. Now for the big one, we have of course Incineroar. The one and only Incineroar, before gaining Intimidate, was kind of like a slow, bulky, physically oriented Houndoom. Upon gaining Intimidate and Ultra Sun and Moon though, Incineroar became the defining utility VGC Pokemon, pulling off the incredible feat of eclipsing even Landorusterian, which for younger players was basically Incineroar before Incineroar, and seemed practically irreplaceable beforehand. But boy did Incineroar do it. Intimidate made it quite effective in singles as well, but in VGC it became basically the whole meta. Impossible to KO even for super effective attacks, and inspiring many nerfs to Intimidate from Game Freak, like buffing Inner Focus and Own Temple to block it. Even still, Incineroar is the most dominant and essential Pokemon around, and has been for generations, and it's continuing into Champions. In Gen 8 it got even better by receiving a pivoting alternate to U-turn and Parting Shot, which further weakened the opponent, while the switch out effect would let it come back to unleash another round of Intimidate. Champions actually nerfed Incineroar by taking away Knockoff, but no matter, this is a minor speed bump, not nearly sufficient to stop it from taking on and shaping every single format it's in. Now to its water counterpart, we have Primarina. Primarina was already a great Pokemon, with its robust typing and stats, and actually got better in both subsequent generations that it was in. In Gen 8, it received both Combine and Draining Kiss, giving its game more depth with the option for a boosting takeover of the late game. It also gained Flip Turn, but it wouldn't be until Gen 9 that it would begin using it, as it was in Gen 9 that it became a fully formed choice for standard play, and not with any insanely busted moves either. It gained Psychic Noise and Encore, which let it come into its own as a great option for playing offense while on defense. Primarina harangued opponents effortlessly through the recovery denial of Psychic Noise, and could either maintain momentum with Flip Turn, or use the move as an option to leverage a Calm Mind sweep. While it usually didn't use its hidden ability Liquid Voice in singles, Primarina did have the option to drop Surf and turn Psychic Noise into its Water Stab, leaving a slot open to dip further into to its impressive move pool. To improve so much without any really enormous changes is an incredible rarity, almost non-existent as power creep explodes the way it does, yet Primarina pulled it off. Now with the Alola starters done, we move on to Gen 8 with Rillaboom. Rillaboom went from just another grass starter to incredibly important Pokemon upon gaining its hidden ability, Grassy Surge, eclipsing the previous grassy terrain setter Tapu Bulu. Rillaboom's move pool is rife with utility like Knockoff and U-Turn, and it hits incredibly hard with Swords Dance, terrain boosted Wood Hammer, and superpowers valuable coverage, but its greatness primarily came from the terrain it set, enabling its amazing stab Grassy Glide, which receives priority under grassy terrain. Grassy Glide hit incredibly hard for a priority move. Yes, Rillaboom had a great attack stat, and the terrain boosted the damage further, but Grassy Glide also clocked in at 70 base power, which is tremendous for a priority move, equivalent to Sucker Punch. Rillaboom's not hard to outspeed, but with priority this strong, it hardly mattered, and of course, this is just how it benefits Rillaboom's own potent offensive threat, thus not even mentioning the amazing utility Rillaboom provides its entire team by setting its terrain. As such, Rillaboom was a major metagame force in both singles and VGC, so much so in the latter that Game Freak saw it fit to nerf Grassy Glide, not by a bit either, reducing it by a whopping 15 BP, even more than the 10 BP reduction to moves like Draco Meteor, Hydro Pump, and Hidden Power. However, even at 55 BP, Rillaboom used it to great effect. After all, it's still much stronger than the usual 40 base power a priority move has, and Glide still receives the terrain boost. It helps that Rillaboom is an all-around amazing Pokemon whose impact extends beyond itself with how much terrain setting assists its teammates. Now over to another top-tier starter, we have Cinderace. Cinderace could reasonably be called Protean Greninja, Fire Edition, right down to being banned, making it the third starter to get the ban hammer. In fact, Cinderace was banned twice in the 8th generation, its retest in the Crown Tundra DLC, reaffirming just how absurd it was even with the expanded Pokedex. Just in case anyone thought it was the limited dex of the earlier Isle of Armor metagame that pushed it over the top. Nope, Cinderace was just a perfect destructive machine. Its superb attack and speed, alongside an excellent move pool to have Omni Stab on, and heavy duty boots to avoid getting worn down by hazards, let it run circles around the metagame. Even if Cinderace didn't KO you immediately, it would eventually, and it didn't take long for it to get you to that point, given how hard it hit just about everything, and even stung further with powerful stab U-turn as it escaped from the battle. It could even bulk up to break through bulkier Pokemon like Hippowdon, or Sucker Punch the rarer Pokemon that outsped it, like Dragapult. It's quite possible Cinderace's Protean-fueled demolition led to the ability being nerfed, but that's just one theory. Now this brings us to the fact Gen 8 is the second to have a starter that's been passed over entirely to this day, Inteleon. Its hidden ability, Sniper, isn't nearly on par with its Gen 8 cohorts, and joins Infernape in this category of being insufficient for this video. Maybe there's something about the starters whose names start with I. Anyway, with the Galar starters behind us, we now go to Gen 9, and that other Protean starter, Meowscarada. Meowscarada, who makes a compelling case for the other theory about its ability, which is that maybe Protean was nerfed because Game Freak feared what Meowscarada would do with it. Even with the nerf version of the ability, it's an absolute menace. It has superb speed, one base point higher than Greninja, and it hits hard with its strong attack knockoff and its auto crit signature move Flower Trick, which beautifully cut through intimidates and defense boosts alike. It was already quite a threat, and then it gained an absolutely incredible coverage option, Triple Axle. Stab or no stab, the ice coverage vastly expanded its one-hit KO repertoire through the many new super effective hits it gained. Though if it's the first move it selects upon switching in, watch out, because there's little scarier than Ice Stab, and while switching in, Meowscarada doesn't even have to deal with Ice's defensive downside, instead getting the benefits of Grass Dark's many useful resists. Now over to the fire starter, we have Skeledirge, which doesn't seem like much at first. Fire Ghost typing is cool, but comes with quite a few weaknesses, which generally doesn't go well with such low speed. Not super promising. Okay, it's bulky and has the recovery of Slack Off, that's great, but what of that hidden ability? Unaware? Well, who better to imitate than Quagsire? And indeed, Skeledirge took on a role in not just OU, but Ubers as well, leveraging the unique resist of its typing alongside Unaware's Boots Ignoring and Will-O-Wisp burns to really fill out its physical hit taking against several of the scariest Pokemon in the game. And that's no exaggeration, considering it was sometimes going up against Koraidon, Zacian Crown, and Arceus. Skeledirge wasn't without its faults, but it occupied a thoroughly unique, effective role. Now to finish things off with our last Paldea starter, we have Quaquaval. Quaquaval already had a lot to like. Great attack and solid speed, with Keldeo-esque dual stabs, the water stab of which boosted its speed, which it could also do with the hazard clearing Rapid Spin, and it could also boost its attack through Swords Dance. Its hidden ability Moxie took its whole setup a step further, allowing it to gain an attack boost while KOing an opponent, and if the move used to KO the opponent was Aqua Step, Quaquaval would basically have gotten a Dragon Dance boost. The innate strength of the setup and coverage options, making it a real snowball effect cleaner late game, was punched up further by another later addition to its move pool. Once again, Triple Axle. Ice covers synergize with Quaquaval's dual staff gorgeously, making it even more complete as a threat, able to more effectively wall break or clean up, depending on the set. It gave a Pokemon already full of options another excellent one. And thank you so much to our Platinum patrons. Thank you to Alex Sable, Anthony Belval Renault, Daniel Isbeast, Corman, Don Creek, Eric Dissing, Espion Lover, Funky, Glitcherton, Howl, Jack G, King Yabber, Nightfall, Megamon VGC, Mojo Game Slayer, Nurse Jake, One Penguin to Rule, Pretzel SP, Palamute, Schmooter, Seagulls Incorporated, Sojiro Sakura, Spavoon, Skylaria, Soras and Croxon, Shiwei Miji, Stoneface Colin, Tyler, Kiboflu, Wardine, Zathor for their major support of our videos.